We're at the school shop today, and what we're going to do is we are going to take apart a power steering pump, and we're going to show you the insides of it, and we're going to give some instruction on how this pump works. So this is our power steering pump, all right, and the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking off this pulley. It has an integral reservoir, so here's our reservoir, so that's going to have to come off, and then we can get to the point where we can fully dismantle this power steering pump. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of instruction on how to use a power steering pulley removal tool set, and there's several pieces that go along with it. We've got our center bolt and our pin that we're going to have down against the input shaft, the shaft of the pump, and that'll help us to get the pulley pulled off. We also have this collar that comes in two pieces. So you've got one side that has a pretty deep shelf and another side that has a shallower shelf. And then you've got this nut assembly. So the way we put this together is there's a little groove right here that the deep shelf fits into. All right. So we want this nut assembly to live inside right here. All right, and then we put the collar over it, and that's what it looks like. All right. Now we're going to take this nut or this bolt with our pin, and we're going to bring that in and through this nut. And we're going to take it down until we just get a little bit of tension. Okay, so now it looks like that. So the idea here is to hold the nut portion, and we're going to use an air tool, an impact wrench, to turn this bolt through, and that'll pull this pulley off. All right. So this uses a 13/16 wrench on the nut side, and then this is a 1/2 inch drive socket on the impact side. So I'm going to have Emilio hold on to that wrench. All right, and we're going to make some noise. Now it's a press fit, so it takes a little bit of effort to get this thing off. All right. So voila, here's our pulley. Now, depending on the type of power steering pump you have and the year, make, and model of the vehicle that you're working with, you could either have a serpentine belt pulley, okay, so you can see the little ridges in there for the serpentine belt, or it might be a V-belt pulley, V-belts type pulley system. Okay, and again, here's my serpentine belt pulley system. All right. All right, so we have the power steering pump mounted into a vise at this point. And what we have to do now is we have to get these clips off of the unit. So there's one on each side. And then that will allow us to remove the reservoir. So there's a spring clip here that I'm going to use a screwdriver to pull out on. And he's going to go ahead and, with a pin punch and a hammer, we're going to tap this clip off of the pump. Again. Okay, keep coming. All right, so there's our clip. All right, and you can see how it's got a square cut edge, 90-degree here, and then it's got this little rounded edge, and that's the part that fits on the top. All right, so we're gonna, when we put it back on, we're gonna go in this direction and tap it back on. So we're gonna do the other side. So I'm gonna rotate the pump a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to catch this clip, and then Emilio's going to tap that other side. So hold on just a second. Okay, go. All right, so now both clips are off. So now it's just a matter of grabbing a hold of the reservoir and simply pulling, and it comes off. So there's our reservoir. All right, this is what holds our power steering fluid. And then our power steering fluid enters the pump from right there. Okay, and there's a little O-ring in there so that it seals the reservoir to the pump. Now we're going to take out our pressure regulator assembly. All right, so the pressure regulator assembly is such that there's a valve inside. There's also a spring down low, which I'll be showing you. This is where the high pressure power steering line would screw into the pump. All right, so go ahead and take that out. As it's coming out, kind of control it, because that spring's going to want to push that valve up and out of there. Okay. There you go. Okay, so let's go get, well, here, just hold on to that for a second. I'll just take this out. Okay, so here is the fitting for our line. There's a venturi in there. So a venturi is that as that fluid comes in, it gets squeezed through a smaller part of the opening, and it changes the pressure as fluid is leaving, coming out through that line. Okay, so we use that as a back pressure to help regulate what's happening with the rest of the valve. So here's the rest of the valve. So we've got this valve, and inside of the valve is where we can control that pressure. So there's a spring in there, there's some shims, there's a check ball that gets pushed off its seat when we get too much pressure, like when we're into a lock-to-lock type of position, a tight turning circumference, like in a parking lot maneuver. And then here's the spring that this valve gets pushed against, all right, and causes this valve to move inside of that passage. And once it moves far enough, it allows that high pressure fluid to go right back into the reservoir, so that we don't end up blowing up a hose or locking up the engine, okay, or causing the belt to squeal because the pump is trying to create too much pressure. All right, so there's that. And then the next step is to actually dismantle the pump. All right, so we're going to be removing this cover to get access to the actual pump inside. Okay, so we got the pump mounted back into the vise so that we can get this end cap off to open the unit up. Where's your light? That's better. All right, so there's a clip in there that's a spring clip, and there's a hole in the back of the unit that I can use to collapse part of that spring clip, and then we're going to use a screwdriver to work the rest of that clip out. Now, some of these guys are spring loaded, so once that clip comes out, if you don't watch it, it'll push that cap sky high. Okay, we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to finish lining up this clip so we can get it collapsed from that hole, and then I'm going to collapse it. And then we'll use a screwdriver to get it the rest of the way out. Okay. Let me see the hammer. Okay, get your screwdriver right under there, underneath that lip right there. Okay, and start pulling it up a little bit. Okay. keep working it around. Get underneath it from the outside, and then just kind of start lifting on it. Okay. So there's our retaining clip, right, that holds the back of this thing all together. Mount this back into the vise with the input shaft facing up. And I want to make sure that I'm going to be ready to catch everything that's going to come out. So what I'm going to have him do is we're going to tap on the end with a hammer. Grab your hammer and tap on that input shaft. Okay, so undo that for me, undo the vise for me. Okay, all right, so we're going to move this over to the bench now, and that way I can explain to you what's going on inside.